Before we get started, I want to dedicate this review to Stan Lee. There are no words to describe the impact his amazing characters have made on pop culture, and how devastated I was to hear the news of his death, even if he had a good long life and his work will continue to be loved for years to come, as evidenced by the success they've found both in the original comics, and a lot of them in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. It shouldn't be understated that he was so incredible at writing heroes because he truly was one. If you look at stuff like his soapbox, you can see he held himself to the same standard as his creations. Both they and him are amazing examples of goodness, and while he'll mostly be remembered by general audiences for his cameos, he earned every last one of them. Thank you for everything, Stan. You may be gone, but you and the heroes you made will never be forgotten. You'll always be one of my heroes. Rest in peace. Excelsior.
Greetings, surfers of the interweb. I'm PowerX11, reviewer of the good, the bad, and the underrated. Even though Iron Man was lightning in a bottle, the Marvel Cinematic Universe seemed to fizzle out a bit afterwards, following it up with the OK Hulk and the mess Iron Man 2. It was about time to inject some new energy into the franchise with a new character and a new aspect to the universe, and we got both of those in Thor.
In terms of the Avengers roster, Thor always seemed to be the one people seemed most okay with. No one disliked the guy, but till Ragnarok, no one seemed to go crazy for him. I myself had a kind of strange relationship with his first film, enjoying it while I watched it, but forgetting a lot of it afterwards.
Did I find any mythic treasure on a closer look, or just more cracks than a frost giant's heel? Let's find out as we take a look at Thor.
This film starts in New Mexico.
With science, of course!
That doesn't sound right.
Specifically, Jane Foster, Eric Selvig, and Darcy investigating atmospheric disturbances. May as well set our expectations low by starting with the film's weakest element.
Jane? I think you want to see this.
It's the start of the plot.
Yeah, drive into the twister rather than just studying it from a distance. Some scientists. How is it I've been able to use that joke for every Marvel origin film so far?
Where did he come from?
From a land down under. Or realm up above.
We actually get started back in the 9th century with narration from Anthony Hopkins as Odin.
Once, mankind accepted a simple truth, that they were not alone in this universe.
Then they went through their emo phase where they thought they were alone and no one understood them.
He tells of a war between the Asgardians and Frost Giants taking place on Earth.
Can you have fought your own wars in your own realms, dickheads?
This is a great establishment for the mythical forces threatening Midgard, and the Asgardians protecting us. The least we could do in return is worship them. It is pretty Lord of the Rings-esque, with heroic ancient beings in gold armor fighting dark forces, but what sets it apart is Branagh's amazing use of colour. The desolate shadowy earth with the brilliant gold Aesir and cold blue frost giants clashing looks stunning.
With the last great war ended, we withdrew from the other worlds and returned home to the realm eternal.
I guess Odin isn't as up-to-date on prophecies in this franchise as in mythology.
Or he was referring to how Asgard's design really sticks in the mind. An amazing mix of high fantasy and science fiction with the emphasis on columns along with lots of metal and floating buildings. Jack Kirby would be proud. It then turns out Odin was talking to Thor and Loki as little kids.
I'll hunt the monsters down and slay them all.
A wise king never seeks out war, but he must always be ready for it.
Take notes, every world leader, because that's a really damn good message.
Only one of you can ascend to the throne, but both of you were born to be kings.
So you'll just have to kill each other. We then see grown-up Thor about to be named king, and this film really highlights probably the most consistently perfect aspect of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The casting. With our 3 Asgardian leads, I couldn't imagine anyone more perfect to play them. Chris Hemsworth excellently captures Thor's boisterous nature, as well as his nobility buried by petty glory hounding at the beginning. Hopkins is amazing as the stern but fair and wise Odin, whose time as ruler is nearly over, and Tom Hiddleston as Loki is...
Indeed.
Although in case you were wondering why Magni, Modi and Balder aren't at the coronation...
Sorry. In my defense, they started it.
And man, that helmet's awesome. Can't wait to see it in battle. Oh, wait.
Thor, Odin's son, my firstborn.
But while the ceremony is going on, there are chilling plots afoot.
Do you swear to preserve the peace?
I swear.
Unless I happen to be in a bad mood.
I, Odin Allfather, proclaim you
Get on with the ceremony!
The Frost Giants are there to reclaim the casket of ancient winters, but luckily the Destroyer's on hand to kill them.
Sad thing is, they were just stealing it to make slushes and they were going to share with the Asgardians as a peace offering.
Also remember this.
It's going to become really important later.
We immediately see why Thor is very unready to be king. He jumps to the conclusion that it was Laufey, the Frost Giants' king, and wants to go and kill them all, while Odin, who has more experience with war and diplomacy, wishes to think things through.
Break their spirits or they'll never dare try to cross our borders again.
You're thinking only as a warrior.
This was an act of war!
It was the act of but a few, doomed to fail.
Look how far they got!
Plus there's the fact that they were trying to take back a Jotun relic basically stolen by the Aesir, adding more greys to a situation that Thor's trying to treat as black and white.
As king of Asgard...
But you're not king! Not yet.
He needs to sit in on some anger management classes before he sits on the throne.
If it's any consolation, I think you're right. About the Frost Giants, about Laufey, about everything.
Nice of Loki's manipulations to start off subtly. First time watching it just looks like sucking up, but on rewatch he's clearly stoking Thor's rage further and coercing him into worse decisions, such as going to Jotunheim.
Thor, it's madness.
Madness?
This is Asgard!
Although he does show a good characteristic of rulers, ego-stroking of his friends, the warrior friends, and Sif. They ride to yet another perfect casting of the Bifrost, Idris Elba as Heimdall.
But Heimdall's supposed to be the whitest Norse god.
Yeah, well, Idris Elba's awesome. Go f*** yourself.
He immediately sees through the group's plan, but has his own reasons for letting them through.
Never has an enemy slipped my watch until this day. I wish to know how that happened.
It can't have been because I was on my coffee break.
What happened? Silver tongue turned to lead?
Well, at least people can remember his name.
I have no plans to die today.
None do.
I plan to die 7 years later at the hands of a purple space giant. Wait, what? In contrast to the glistering splendour of Asgard, the barren coldness of Jotunheim is set in pretty well, by the strong shadows and emphasis on blues, also helped by the toned-down score.
You've come a long way to die, Asgardians.
I am Thor, Odin's son.
We know who you are.
Well, that's an awesome voice. Already puts him ahead of Abomination and Whiplash.
Plus, even if he's a fairly minor villain, Laufey is kinda interesting. Not only does he not take any of Thor's boasting, but despite his clear hatred of the Asgardians, he wants to avoid yet another costly war.
You know not what your actions would unleash. I do.
Even a manipulator like him is a better ruler than Thor, favouring subtler tactics that would keep his people safe rather than Thor, who puts his brother and friends in danger by thoughtlessly going to start a war. Not to mention giving off a greater sense of power with his high throne and deep, calm speaking voice rather than Thor's childish shouting.
The House of Odin is full of traitors.
Do not dishonour my father's name with your lies!
Your father is a murderer and a thief.
He even allows them to leave, but...
Run back home, little princess.
Dad.
Funny how tough guys often have such fragile egos.
Unfortunately, the action of this film isn't the best. It's far from terrible, as a lot of the effects are very good and Thor's tricks with Mjolnir are a treat to see, as well as Loki's illusions. But the hand-to-hand combat with Sif and the Warriors 3 is pretty shaky and hard to make out. Branagh is amazing at cinematography, but with action he kinda falters, which is probably why there aren't very many fight scenes in the film.
Oh my Odin! I'm part Smurf!
Pretty Boy starts getting a cold shoulder, but Thor's too focused on killing to take notice. Yet another sign he'd make a poor king given his lack of care to his subjects.
Aw, doggy! Stop! Hammer time.
You can't touch this.
I couldn't resist.
However, Thor does finally come to his friend's aid to kill the poor doggy as they're surrounded by the giants. For loving diplomacy, he sure does love showing off his power, but he does try to negotiate, acknowledging Thor's childishness and wanting peace.
We are beyond diplomacy now, Allfather. He'll get what he came for. War and death.
Well, crap. Then again, I can't really blame him, considering one of Odin's titles is Oathbreaker. I wouldn't trust him.
And once they get back to Asgard, Odin has some choice words for his son, chewing him out for his childishness and carelessness. Hopkins is utterly brilliant, showing the anger that he likely tries to cover these days, with his more peaceful ruling style.
You are a vain, greedy, cruel boy! And you are an old man and a fool!
I was a fool. To think you were ready.
Father.
Hey!
There's a little pea coming out of me right now.
His speech to Thor before banishing him is a legitimate tearjerker, mixing rage with a clear disappointment in his son, knowing such an arrogant boy needs a harsh punishment to learn a lesson.
You are unworthy of his realm. You're unworthy of your title. You're unworthy of the loved ones you have betrayed.
Apparently Hopkins improvised most of this speech, and the crew were starting to tear up on set, just testament to how incredible an actor he is.
I now take from you your power. In the name of my father and his father before, I owed it all, father. Cast you out!
And I thought my dad taking my DS for a week when I was 6 was harsh.
And so we get back to where we started, with the scientists finding Thor on Earth.
Whoa, does he need CPR? Because I totally know CPR.
Sorry, you're not quite important enough for a romance. Thor doesn't take it too well. I guess he landed on his head.
What realm is this? Alfheim? Dornheim?
New Mexico?
You dare threaten me, Thor, with so puny a weapon?
Ironic how the God of Thunder is so weak to electricity.
Still a funny way to establish his powerlessness, and at least they're nice enough to take him to a hospital.
Thor, and your relationship to him.
Underdeveloped and bland.
Though it turns out Thor does as well as the doctors as I do at dentists. I really need a job to pay for all the legal fees.
You are no match for the mighty!
In the desert, Mjolnir finds itself in the sights of something far worse than frost giants. Rednecks! Oh, and the scientists are investigating science stuff. Them investigating the Asgardian magic through a scientific lens is still interesting, and I like the idea of their magic being alien tech so advanced it seems like sorcery, but these scenes do drag compared to the larger-than-life ones on Asgard. Part of that is the more restrained colours and direction, which does a good job of making it seem more mundane, while having a primarily yellow colour scheme like Asgard, but it does pale in comparison. I guess it could have been more engaging if we were shown this first and the stuff on Asgard later, but that could have got pretty damn tedious, so I guess this was necessary. Eat your heart out, Houdini. So Jane and her friends will have to search night and day for their best lead, never ceasing in their relentless quest for knowledge.
Oh, Jane, you really need to stop hitting on Thor. He could get brain damage.
Also, the little touch of Darcy preparing the taser is pretty funny. She can sometimes be a bit annoying, but a lot of her little moments are funny. Back with the rednecks, none of them can lift the hammer.
Good thing too, Larry the Cable Guy with Mjolnir. Ugh.
Did it work?
Oh, bollocks! Any vehicle worthy of carrying Stan Lee is worthy of lifting Mjolnir. Heck, he probably could have just got it out of the stone by lifting it with his bare hands. I see nothing wrong with this scene.
What is this?
Oh. My ex.
Don't worry about it, it's just a reference to the comics and the MCU's continuing Secret Identity aversion.
Meanwhile, in Asgard, the warriors are complaining when Loki reveals he told some guards to go to Odin before they left for Jotunheim.
He should be flogged for taking so long. We should never have reached Jotunheim.
You told the guard.
Oh no! He did something reasonable when his brother was going to attempt to start a war! Dicks.
I mean, his insults against Thor are kind of too far, but they're still right.
I love Thor more dearly than any of you, but you know what he is. He's arrogant, he's reckless, he's dangerous. You saw how he was today. Is that what Asgard needs from its king?
That being said, it does set up Loki's jealousy and his feelings of loneliness compared to Thor even before the next scene, where he goes to the casket.
What am I?
You're my son.
What more than that?
Suddenly one of my top choices for the Throne film Disney needs to make. I mean, if Lars Mikkelsen doesn't come back. And Benedict Cumberbatch would be pretty sweet too.
Odin reveals he found Loki abandoned in Jotunheim, so took him in. And to make things even more complicated, he's the son of Laufey. I like to think this is when Odin changed his warrior ways, realizing how many orphans he was creating and suffering he was causing, but also hints to his rather manipulative character in mythology, also wanting Loki as a bargaining chip to broker an alliance with the giants, even if he says that doesn't matter now. And of course, Hiddleston is superb, getting the perfect mixture of loathing for himself and Odin, fear of what he is, and sadness for being lied to his whole life, which really helps him becoming such a sympathetic but twisted antagonist.
I wanted only to protect you from the truth.
What? Because I am the monster parents tell their children about at night? It all makes sense now why you favored Thor all these years. Because no matter how much you claim to love me, you could never have a frost giant sitting on the throne of Asgard.
Despite his ranting at Odin, once he faints, Loki doesn't hesitate to call the guards. This is such a damn powerful scene and always makes me tear up. Good thing there's some comedy in the next one to balance it out.
How could you eat an entire box of Pop-Tarts and still be this hungry?
He needs to pack on those muscles somehow.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
What was that?
It was delicious. I want another.
Well, you could have just said so.
Oh, it got the waitress's attention.
Ask nicely.
I meant no disrespect.
All right, well, no more smashing. Deal?
You have my word.
I mean, who do you think I am, the Hulk? Also a nice little moment of Thor becoming more empathetic and reasonable. They then overhear about the crash site as Thor parts ways with them due to Eric's suspicions.
Oh, I'm sure they'll never meet again, and Sif will be his love interest so they can be partners in badassery, and Thanos is gonna kill half the universe in Infinity Ooh. Right, Marvel had actually got more confident by then.
However, once they get back to the lab, it turns out s.h.i.e.L.D. has taken all their equipment. I mean, Coulson's so precious, he deserves it.
You can't do this!
It's the government. Are you really surprised?
Thank you for cooperation.
Okay, that's surprising from a government official.
I knew the scientist, the pioneer in gamma radiation. S.h.i.e.L.D. showed up and, he wasn't heard from again.
Then again, he could also change his face when his actor was difficult, so maybe I just didn't recognize him. Back on Asgard, I'm using back on a lot in this review, aren't I? Loki has taken the throne as his father's fallen into the Odin sleep, and Frigga, is underqualified for the job.
My friends, you can bring your urgent matter to me.
I'm the bad guy, but you can trust me. Friends.
Once again, this scene is brilliant. Loki acts far more confident and intimidating towards his former friends now that he has power, and Branny uses tilted angles and a bluer tint to the Golden Throne Room to show Loki's turn to darkness and the danger he poses to Asgard.
If I may, beg the indulgence of your majesty to perhaps reconsider.
We're done.
In Puente Antiguo...
Hold on. The place where the Bifrost lands is called Puente Antiguo, which means... Ah, very clever, Branna.
I need a horse.
We don't have horses, just dogs.
Well, get a wolfhound. Have you seen how big they are? Luckily, Jane's nice enough to give him a lift.
You think me strange?
Yeah, I do.
Good strange or bad strange?
Or Stephen Strange. Oh, damn, too soon.
I'd still say their romance is just okay. It falls into the same flaws as Bruce and Betty in that thematically they're pretty good, with Jane attempting to unravel the mysteries around Thor while helping him adjust to Midgard and become more noble. But in practice, their romance just feels obligatory and doesn't hold a candle to their relationship in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, where Thor's attraction to Jane made more sense, since she was a paramedic and he was perplexed at why a mortal would risk her life. Though I still say Hemsworth and Portman have better chemistry than Norton and Tyler, but that could be down to this film having a better script and direction.
But who are you? Really?
I am Iron Man. Damn it!
What you seek, it's a bridge.
Like a Nightstand Rosen bridge?
More like a rainbow bridge.
Asgard is very progressive like that.
On Asgard, Frigga fears he'll never wake from the Odin sleep, so it'll only take him a day or two.
What hope is there for Thor?
There's always a purpose to everything your father does.
Like that time he hung himself on Yggdrasil, there's purpose to that. And him spilling mead on Heimdall's crotch. All part of the plan. And forgetting my birthday 9,000 years and show respect for your old father! It turns out the government has built a whole station around Mjolnir. Subtle.
You think you're just gonna walk in, grab our stuff, and walk out?
No, I'm gonna fly out.
That'll become heartbreaking in a bit.
We've got something outside the fence.
It looks kinda protagonist-ish. One thing interesting about these Phase 1 films is how the heroes deal with their powers. Stark is forced to build his own power, Banner's is forced upon him so he tries to get rid of it, and Thor is forcefully depowered so tries to regain it. The only one who actively seeks it for selfless reasons is Steve Rogers, but we'll get to him next time. For a big burly blonde guy, Thor actually manages to be stealthy for longer than I expected. About a minute, but seeing him brawl it out with the S.h.i.e.L.D. personnel is pretty damn cool. Especially the big guy in the mud. It's well choreographed and kinda brutal.
Yep, the choreography is the only interest I find in this scene. Nothing else that could be pleasing to my eyes. Well, it's kind of satisfying seeing two guys fighting in the mud rather than two girls for once.
And all this was such an amazing build-up to Thor not regaining his power. Well, we are only halfway through the film. It's such a great fake-out. The score builds only to become solemn as Thor desperately struggles to get the hammer out, but fails. You feel his disappointment that he fought for nothing. His scream to the heavens gives me the shivers. But it's a great acknowledgement that while he's come a long way, he was still just trying to regain power for himself by breaking and entering, so hasn't truly been humbled.
Also, hi Hawkeye!
Alright, show's over.
Bye Hawkeye! Why was he even in this film?
Jane goes back to Eric and is understandably unhappy, but Eric's still suspicious.
I'm talking about science, not magic.
Well, magic's just science that we don't understand yet. Arthur C. Clarke.
Who wrote science fiction?
A precursor to science fact!
In some cases.
Out of the scientists, Eric's the only one I'd say is actually a great character. Letting go of his arrogance and being more willing to accept out their ideas, like the existence of Asgard, as a contrast to Thor also becoming more humble by trying to understand and help ordinary people like him.
Plus, he proves Clarke's first law of science fiction. When a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong.
Thor's not doing so well, getting grilled by Coulson.
Why don't you tell me where you received your training? Pakistan? Chechnya? Afghanistan? No, you strike me more as the soldier of fortune type.
Soldier for his own ego, I guess that's a kind of fortune.
Then Loki comes down to really cement how loathsome he is.
Let me explain to Father.
Father is dead.
Can I come home?
The truce with Jotunheim is conditional upon your exile.
Yes, but couldn't we find a way?
And Mother has forbidden your return.
It's saying something that Loki can still be somewhat sympathetic after such a terrible act. But twisting the knife like this inadvertently seals his defeat by making Thor want to do right by Odin. Not to mention that Thor didn't mean to hurt those around him, while Loki actively and gladly does so. As well as a less subtle but still great symbol of how poor a ruler he makes, is his inability to lift Mjolnir, since he's becoming just as arrogant and selfish as his brother was. Luckily, Selvig's had a change of heart, probably because of Jane giving him puppy eyes, and has come to get Donald.
Wait. A blonde guy named Donald who's a terrible leader that most of his people don't support, who starts random fights and talks big but has nothing to back it up.
He is doing pretty good in the White House right now.
Is he though?
Where are we going?
To get a drink.
Nice lads. This is also a nice heart-to-heart where they admit their arrogance and get to know each other better, even though they haven't entirely developed, as Thor still doesn't know what to do and Selvig still wants him to leave due to being protective of Jane.
Thor's my spirit animal in this scene.
Meanwhile, Loki decides to give his dear old evil dad a visit.
Kill him.
After all I've done for you.
So you're the one who showed us the way into Asgard.
What a twist!
He proposes the plan to conceal more frost giants to get into Asgard and kill Odin. Not a bad trade, though Hopkins is worth more alive.
Oh my god. Is he okay?
He's fine, not injured at all.
I'm sorry, my friend.
What happened?
We drank, we fought. He made his ancestors proud.
There's your real spirit animal, P-Man.
Remind me to rewire your sarcasm circuits, Jamie.
Of course, when your hypocrisy is repaired.
Touché.
Thor and Jane then share a nice scene outside which further fleshes out the Asgardians basically being ancient aliens. Oh, god damn it! I do admire Doctor Strange for going all out with magic, but for this early in the cinematic universe it was probably best to make the ACM more grounded in reality. And it does work, especially with the sci-fi fantasy blend Thor's comics tend to have. We then get some unmissable scenes of the warriors bickering.
Shame on you, don't you care?
Do not mistake my appetite for apathy!
Okay, that was a good line.
We must find Thor. It's treason.
Heimdall might be watching.
Heimdall demands your presence.
You would defy the commands of Loki, our king. Break every oath you have taken as warriors and commit treason to bring Thor back.
Yes.
Good.
Heimdall's so badass. He knows he'll get on Loki's bad side, but he don't give a fuck.
So you'll help us?
I am bound by honor to our king. I cannot open the bridge to you.
Complicated fellow, isn't he?
Now what do we do?
Heimdall, god of loopholes.
On a lighter note is Thor helping make breakfast. Aww.
Is there a Renaissance fair in town? Call it in.
We got LARPers incoming! LARPers incoming!
At base, we've got Xena, Jackie Chan, and Robin Hood.
I know they're forgettable, but they didn't even nickname the fat one? Wow.
My friends!
Even Thor can't remember their names.
But they do at least serve the purpose of revealing that Loki lied and that Odin's still alive, as his little bro further seals how he needs to be stopped by sending the Destroyer down to kill Thor.
For your act of treason, you are relieved of your duties as gatekeeper, and no longer citizen of Asgard.
And I need no longer obey you.
Oh my god, that is so awesome. Heimdall's just so cool.
Very poor choice of words.
I am Lord Zed, Emperor of all I see.
Except, no. I might be blind, but am I the only one who doesn't get why people think the Destroyer and Lord Zed look alike? I mean, the grill face looks similar, but that was only on Zed's mouth. And except the metallic look, they're nothing alike, especially as the Destroyer's all metal while Zed has the creepy muscle and tubes going for him.
Also, the Destroyer is 29 years older than Lord Zed. Just saying.
I'm a fire in the labor!
Once they spot the Destroyer, Thor performs his first truly heroic act, staying to help evacuate the town and putting himself in the line of fire, even without powers. Not that powers would do him much good given the pathetic display the warriors put up.
Oh yes, Sif! Best warrior! Mimir's mead, that's creepy!
The Destroyer works well as this soulless force of chaos, utterly unstoppable and contrasting Thor's change of heart since he was a mindless brute like it.
Property damage!
Sif, you've done all you can.
No, I will die a warrior's death. Stories will be told of this day.
Live and tell those stories yourself.
Maybe you'll get a warrior's death come Ragnarok. Wait.
have to stop Loki.
What about you?
Do not worry, my friends. I have a plan.
You have a plan? I mean, I have part of a plan.
And his brilliant plan is trying to talk Loki down.
Still not really one for strategy, eh, Thor?
In all seriousness, this is a touching scene. He realizes that he'll die, but still apologizes to Loki and offers his life for the townspeople. It even seems to work. Until...
No!
A god dying for his sins rather than other people's. Fitting. And what only makes this sacrifice more fitting is that in mythology, Thor was always the guardian of Midgard and protector of man.
Luckily, we all near consensus character development. Thor has become a true hero through his totally selfless actions, and through it regains his hammer, giving him a suiting up sequence that even gives Tony a run for his money, and that's a lot of money. The fight against the Destroyer is a bit quick, but it's still an awesome show of Thor at full strength, but taking this fight more seriously since now he cares to protect those around him.
So is this how you normally look?
More or less.
It's a good look.
Gotta admit I missed the helmet, but yeah, it is a good look. The costuming department deserves as much praise as their casting agents.
From this day forward, you can count me as your ally. If you return the items you have taken from Jane.
Stolen.
Borrowed. Of course you can have your equipment back.
I love Coulson so much, he's so precious. As Loki lets Laufey into Asgard, Thor calls Heimdall to bring him back. Well, since he's frozen that won't be possible. Just kidding, he's cooler than I, so of course the badass breaks out and brings Thor back up.
I must go back to Asgard, but I give you my word. I will return for you.
Thor, touch wood. Wait, they're in a desert. Ah, poo.
Just as Thor arrives in Asgard, the Frost Giants make it into Odin's chamber, only for Loki to blast Laufey down. It turns out this was all a ruse to kill the giants rather than Odin.
That's not a bad plan, actually.
I've seen quite a few people criticize this scheme as stupid, but while it took me 1 or 2 rewatches to fully get it, I find it very fitting. Loki is falling into the same trap Thor did, trying to impress Odin by killing the Frost Giants like he did, only rather than brute force, he's doing it through manipulation and trickery like a god of mischief would. Through this, it would seem like an unmotivated attack rather than Thor's clear act of provocation. He's likely still going through self-loathing from the revelation he was adopted, but probably came to the conclusion that he'd prefer the father who took him in rather than the one who abandoned him to die.
When he wakes, I will have saved his life. I will have destroyed that race of monsters, and I will be true heir to the throne.
He would have even got away with it if he just pushed Heimdall off the Bifrost, and if it hadn't been for Thor regaining his powers and snitching on him to their mum.
How can I feel such sympathy for a loathsome little worm?
He then goes full-blown megalomaniac, using the power of the Bifrost to destroy Jotunheim, turning the room blue to symbolize how far he's fallen, worse than the supposed monsters he seeks to annihilate. Run, the Skybeam's gonna kill us all!
I will not fight you, brother!
I'm not your brother. I never was.
Loki, this is madness.
Is it madness? Is it?
Yes.
What happened to you on Earth that turned you so soft? Don't tell me it was that woman!
Jane turning Thor soft. That doesn't sound right.
Our final battle is, once again, alright, but not that impressive. At the very least, both Thor and Loki have a good rivalry, and I feel the stakes with Thor attempting to redeem himself by saving Jotunheim. But the choreography is kinda shaky, and the fight itself is also very brief, so we can't quite feel the tragedy of the brothers turning on each other.
Brother, please.
Aww, he's like an evil kitten.
Oh look, every fangirl's fantasy. However, the Bifrost has built up so much energy that Thor can't get to it, so he has to break the bridge. The true showing of how selfless he's become, protecting both Jotunheim and Jane by giving her up, even with Loki's taunting.
Destroy the bridge or let us see her again!
Forgive me, Jane.
With the bridge destroyed, Jotunheim is safe, but Loki is left hanging from Thor, who's saved by a conveniently awake Odin.
I could have done it, Father! I could have done it! For you! For all of us!
No, Loki.
The the ultimate symbol of how far Loki's fallen.
Even at Thor's worst, he attacked the giants in retaliation for invading Asgard and killing his people, even if he was mostly motivated by his ego and bloodlust. But with Loki, there's no nobility to his aim to destroy the Jotnar. He only did it because of his insecurity and need to prove himself, leading to attempting something even worse than war. Genocide. So he lets go, falling into the realms where I'm sure we'll never see him again. In the aftermath, the Asgardians celebrate, but Thor is miserable from losing Jane and Loki, a pretty bitter way to end his character arc, even if he did win and grow into a real man by the end.
There will never be a wiser king than you. Or a better father.
Aww. Even if he isn't. Aww.
Can you see her?
Yes.
She's in the shower. Heimdall! Can you let me look? No.
After some beautiful cosmic end credits, Selvig is brought to meet universe-building man.
Legend tells us one thing, history another. But every now and then we find something that belongs to both.
What is it?
Sequel setup. Potentially unlimited. And of course Loki's alive, but that and the establishment of the Tesseract are still cool.
So that was Thor, and this film is actually quite a lot better than I remembered it.
While it's far from the best film in the MCU, I still say it's pretty great and pretty underrated. All the cast are incredible and breathe so much life into their characters. The direction and visuals are impressive, Patrick Doyle's score is epic and powerful, and the contrasting growth of Thor and fall of Loki feels very Shakespearean, appropriate given Branagh in the director's chair. However, the stuff on Earth, while engaging with Thor's character arc, does drag compared to the large-scale stuff on Asgard. Though that storyline does have Loki, so it's kind of unfair to compare them. I get the feeling that if Jane was a more compelling character, the film would be stronger. She's still alright and Portman is great as she always is, but she's mostly trying to investigate stuff the audience already knows about, so doesn't come off as clever as everyone says. I also feel like the film would be better liked if the action was slightly better. While the character writing and general direction of the film is superb, the action is usually too brief or very shaky and hard to make out, so it doesn't feel as large scale as the rest of the film. There is also the double-edged sword of Thor starting out so arrogant. Similar to Tony, but with him we could still see some positive traits to begin with, like his wit and intelligence. It takes till the scene in the diner for Thor to have any likability. His arc is still great, but people would have probably latched onto him more if we'd had more shows of his nobility earlier, since he is so bratty and pig-headed to begin with. Despite these flaws, I still think Thor is a great film, with excellent characters and a brilliant new aspect of the Marvel Universe, even if it took till the end of his trilogy to truly tap the legendary hero's full potential.
Next comes another film that I feel is very underrated, and the introduction of my favourite Marvel hero, Captain America the First Avenger. I'm Parex11, thank you for watching.
Cross the rainbow bridge of Asgard.